Overwhelmed and heartbroken, she dials 911. What happens next will change everything forever. The sky darkened with ominous clouds, a cruel reminder of the tempest brewing within Sarah as she stood in the living room of her small Maplewood home. She could hear the gentle laughter of her two children playing outside, a cruel contrast to the storm raging inside her heart. And yet, it was an aching sense of emptiness that gripped her, the relentless weight of financial ruin, now matched only by the loss of her father, a Vietnam veteran whose steadfast love was replaced with a void deeper than she dared to explore. She could hear her father's voice whispering words of strength, but they felt hollow in the deafening silence of her circumstances. "Timmy," she murmured, glancing at the window, her heart dropping. It had been several minutes since she had seen her youngest child. Panic crept in as she let her gaze drift toward the open back door. Had he wandered off again? The anxiety gripped her throat, choking back any rational thought that dared to surface. Sarah fought against the mounting dread, debating whether to call for him or to go after him. The hours spent in the hospital would dictate her decisions. She was trained to assess emergencies. Yet this felt more personal, more visceral. It didn't feel like a broken leg or a sprained wrist. This was a fracture of her heart. Then it hit her. Perhaps he had gone to chase fireflies near the well, just past the tree line where she'd told him many times not to go alone. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Placing a trembling hand over her racing heart, she reached for the phone, hesitating as the internal struggle intensified. After her father's passing, their financial situation was precarious, and the thought of involving the authorities made her stomach turn. Yet underrepresented fear clashed with the raw instinct of a mother's love. The walls around her felt as though they were closing in, each second that ticked by stoking the flames of anxiety. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she held the phone, the terror clawed at her insides. What would she say? My son is missing. She struggled to breathe, steeling herself against the potentially devastating fallout. What if it was a simple misunderstanding, and she'd bring chaos into her life with one misguided call? Would she be seen as a negligent mother, as someone unworthy of her father's legacy? Those dark questions feasted on her internal turmoil, twisting the knife deeper into her heart. Gathering her courage, she dialed 911, her hands shaking as she pressed the call button. The voice on the other end was calm and measured, but that only heightened Sarah's own racing thoughts. She started to speak but faltered, the words caught in her throat. What had she been ready to say? It felt surreal, a nightmare that she couldn't wake from. As the operator calmly asked her questions, her mind swirled with unnameable fears. What if they found him hurt? What if he was gone for good? Staring at her father's medals on the wall, tarnished yet gleaming with history, Sarah couldn't shake off the realization that everything she thought she knew about bravery, about loyalty and honor, was being called into question. In this moment, the battle lines of her life shifted, unearthing unresolved doubts about her father's past, his sacrifice, and the very integrity she had dedicated her existence to uphold. And all she could do was stand there, holding the phone. The sound of distant sirens growing louder, while she whispered to herself, "What am I truly willing to fight for?" The shrill ring of the 911 operator's voice cut through Sarah's turbulent thoughts. "Ma'am, do you have your son's last known location?" For a moment, Sarah felt paralyzed. The very question was like stepping into an abyss of guilt. He was in the backyard. He had been chasing fireflies. The words spilled out, heavy and thick, as if each one weighed 1,000 pounds. As she relayed the scant details, a chill seeped through her, sinking painfully with the reality of what had happened. She had let him wander outside. her focus so consumed by her father's death and mounting bills that she'd allowed a shadow of negligence to creep in. The operator's voice remained steady, a lifeline amid her chaos. "Okay, I'm sending someone to your location. Stay on the line with me. Please hurry," she whispered, her voice cracking. As she spoke, a flicker of shame ignited in her heart. Was this what her life had come to? Relying on strangers to save her child, while she grappled with her failures? With the phone still pressed tightly to her ear, Sarah's gaze drifted outside, searching desperately for any movement among the trees. The echoes of laughter from her other child felt like distant echoes from a happy dream, fading away as the cold reality of the situation settled in. Though she had experienced loss and financial despair, the specter of losing Timmy threatened to swallow her whole. Suddenly, the room felt stifling and claustrophobic, as if the walls were imbued with her fears and regrets. "Ma'am, can you tell me your address?" the operator prompted, pulling her back to the present. Sarah recited her address, every word buoyed by a mix of urgency and disbelief. As she did, she envisioned her father, the man who had fought for his country, who had endured so much pain, yet had always emerged resolute with dignity. His medals hung on the wall above her, a silent reminder of the steadfastness she was meant to embody. How could she possibly live up to his legacy when she was faltering under the simplest of responsibilities? Time seemed to elongate as she waited, and with every fleeting second, her mind spiraled deeper. She thought of the future, the hopes and dreams she had for her children. The academic milestones, first dates, the times they would open their presents on Christmas morning. Could all of that be snatched away by a careless moment, by her own shortcomings? In her heart, a flicker of resolve began to ignite. This couldn't be the end, it had to be the beginning. Perhaps this ordeal was a trespassing upon the very core of her existence, catalyzing a force that would push her into something greater. If they found Timmy safe, she wouldn't just go back to the mundane struggle of day-to-day life. She would take charge of her fate, pursuing a resilience that had lain dormant beneath layers of fear. Suddenly, the shrieking sirens pierced the air. Relief washed over her like a wave, instantly mingled with the dread of uncertainty. Within moments, police officers appeared in her yard, quickly assessing the scene. Sarah's heart pounded with urgency, her focus narrowed to Timmy's every potential hiding spot. But in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, telling her that this moment could be the pivot point she so desperately needed. It was time to confront the tangled mess her life had become. As the officers shouted names, her pulse quickened. Would this be the moment she discovered the fortitude to rise from the ashes of her despair, or was she still shackled by her fears? Then a shout drifted through the air, freezing her in place. "We found him." Time stopped dead in its tracks, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. Relief collided with an anxious uncertainty. What came next would determine if she would finally embrace the fight for her life, her family's future. Would this be the spark that ignited a fire, illuminating her way forward? The sound of that voice echoed ominously in her thoughts, propelling her toward a truth she dared not yet fully accept. Would she finally uncover what she was capable of? Before she could process the thought, a shadow emerged from behind an old oak tree, her son, Timmy, laughing and twirling a firefly in his tiny hand. Sarah gasped, her instincts wrestling with the revelation that she needed to reclaim her control. As relief washed over her, she locked eyes with Timmy. With that connection, a new determination formed within her, thickening the air with the promise of change. Everything was about to shift. It was time to confront her next challenge, the one that had been simmering beneath her denial for years. The moment of truth had arrived. The relief of seeing Timmy alive was quickly overshadowed by the weight of the last few hours pressing heavily on Sarah's chest. As she knelt to scoop him into her arms, she could feel the world shift beneath her, a tectonic tremor waking her from a slumber of complacency. "You scared me so much," she said, her voice a mixture of frantic relief and rising anger. Timmy giggled, oblivious, but she couldn't shake the turmoil swirling within. The officers began to gather around, their chatter filling the air as they reassured her that everything was fine now. For their part, they were methodical and calm, but each word felt like a bitter reminder of her lapse in vigilance. Sarah pulled away, desperate for clarity amid the chaos, and found herself standing at the edge of her unraveled life. As Timmy released the firefly, letting it drift safely into the night, Sarah felt something flicker inside her vision of herself, not the disheveled woman who had just nearly lost her child, but one determined to confront the reality of her situation. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. If this night had shown her anything, it was that she had to fight for her family's future. Once the officers left, leaving behind a lingering sense of urgency, Sarah sat on the curb, her mind racing. The responsibilities of being a widow and a mother weighed heavily, but guilt morphed into motivation. She had spent so long allowing her grief to paralyze her, but now was the time to act. "Okay, Sarah," she whispered to herself, a mantra keyed to ignite change. It would begin with small steps, a collection of deliberate choices aimed at rewriting her narrative. What did she want for her family? She pulled out her phone, the dim light illuminating her determination. The first step was to get herself organized. She had to reclaim not only her time but her identity. With a plan forming, she drafted a to-do list on her notes app. Budget for the month. Review school schedules. Find a local support group. Each item became a stepping stone toward her new life, instilling her with motivation she hadn't felt in ages. The fear that had immobilized her began to transform into an electrifying current pushing her forward. But fear lingered, a chill in the air, as she realized that change was also born from confrontation. It wasn't just external forces she needed to tackle, but the inner demons that had blurred her vision. The looming bills and her dad's death were heavy enough. But if she chose to face them head-on, perhaps she would regain control. As the stars twinkled above, Sarah decided to seek accountability. She would call her old friend, Jenna, seeking not just comfort but also collaboration, someone to challenge her, to spur her into action. It was a big step. Reaching out felt vulnerable, yet it was necessary. She could no longer afford to exist alone in her despair. The hesitation echoed in her mind as she dialed Jenna's number. Would her friend judge her for needing help? But wasn't that the point of friendship, to lean on each other in turbulent times? The line connected, and she hesitated for just a moment, but the moment stalled her resolve. "Hello?" Jenna's voice was warm and inviting. "Jenna, it's Sarah. I need to talk." Sarah's heart raced with the admission. She could almost visualize the weight lifting. They hadn't spoken in months, but now felt like the right time to reconnect. Each word she spoke became an affirmation of her commitment to moving forward, to fostering her strength. Yet, as she spoke, a bitter truth grappled with her. What if she failed again? The flickering anxiety reminded her that this path was fraught with challenges, and reassurance from her friend wouldn't shield her from the turmoil bubbling beneath her surface. "Sarah, are you okay?" Jenna asked, sensing the tremor in her voice. That question hung in the air, a seduction of vulnerability that threatened to unravel her newfound resolve. Would she allow herself to be honest about her fears, or would she present a facade for the sake of maintaining composure? The moment begged her to confront how much she sought affirmation, to unravel the tangled web of lies she'd woven around herself. But this time felt different. Each admission brought clarity. As she spoke each truth, navigating her struggles, a fierce resolve began to bubble within her. If she was going to reshape her narrative, she had to dig deeper. No more hiding in shadows of grief. "Sarah, can we start meeting regularly? I want to help you," Jenna offered, full of compassion. "I'd like that," she said, her heart racing with possibilities. This was no longer a moment of surrender. It was a declaration of war against her own limitations. Little did she know that this was only the beginning. There loomed greater challenges on the horizon, challenges demanding confrontations that would test her resolve in ways she had yet to imagine. The deeper she delved, the more she would discover about herself, and not all revelations would be comforting. Tomorrow, we'll set a schedule. And then, she thought as uncertainty mingled with determination, we'll tackle everything else, together. What awaited her in this journey of rediscovery? It felt intimidating yet liberating, a veiled promise of growth. But something more sinister lurked within a confrontation she was not yet prepared to face. One that could haunt her thoughts and threaten her progress at every turn. Oh God, she thought suddenly, feeling the weight shift once more. What else am I hiding from? The very reflection of that question left her breathless, and she was left wondering what other truths were waiting to be unearthed. The morning sun broke through her curtains, a gentle reminder of the new day before her, yet somehow it felt like an intruder. Sarah's heart thudded as she realized that today would not only mark another chapter in her ongoing struggle, today would shape the path ahead. Timmy's laughter echoed from the backyard, his small attempts to capture the morning light with a kite. The joyous sound contrasted sharply with the weight of the looming uncertainties that swirled around her mind like storm clouds. She had made a decision last night. She would reclaim her agency. The to-do list was still fresh in her mind. But today wasn't just about completing tasks, it was about transformation. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, each sip felt like tiny embers igniting within. There was a fire, a renewed sense of purpose. She recalled her conversation with Jenna. This time she would not just be venting her frustrations. She would strategize, something deeply practical that transcended mere survival. Sarah grabbed a notepad and jotted down ideas for the meeting. Establish specific goals, she wrote, budget planning, career exploration, establishing a routine. It was simple, yet the act of writing it down felt almost revolutionary. This was more than list-making. This was a promise to herself, a commitment to cultivate a life from the ashes. But as she prepared, doubts began to claw at her confidence. What if she set her goals too high and fell short? Each question began to blur with the shadows of her past. The memories of Hal, her husband, haunted her, dark tendrils threatening to pull her back into the abyss of her grief. Who was she without him? Was it fair for her to move forward? Just then, the front door creaked open. Jenna stepped inside with her usual buoyancy, but today, Sarah couldn't embrace it fully. Jenna's bright smile faltered as she took in Sarah's hesitant stance. Ready for today? Jenna asked, her voice gently probing. I think so. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, Sarah admitted, legs shaking under the weight of expectations. Jenna crossed the room in 2 strides, placing a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. You don't have to be certain, just willing. We're not here to craft a perfect plan, we're here to make progress. You're already ahead just by showing up. That moment became a turning point, snapping Sarah from her uncertainty. They sat together at the kitchen table, a space transformed from chaos into a battlefield of ideas. As they strategized, laughter flowed alongside tears, painting a picture of vulnerability as resilience. Okay, what's your career goal? Jenna pushed gently as Sarah hesitated again. I used to love graphic design, but I haven't touched my tablet since. Sarah trailed off, fear tightening around her throat. Since Hal died, Jenna filled in, her tone softening. Yes, Sarah whispered, regret clinging to her words. Why don't we set a timeline? Start with a small project. Let's see what happens. Jenna's encouragement did wonders to thaw Sarah's frozen hopes. They worked through the logistics, laying a foundation for a new venture. As they moved through each category, finances, self-care, recreational activities, sense of empowerment delved deeper into Sarah's core. Each goal became a stone weighing against her past, pulling her forward instead of allowing her to sink. Just when laughter began to blanket the tension, Jenna's phone buzzed, and a shadow crossed her face as she glanced at the screen. I need to check this. Just a minute, she said, stepping out momentarily. Sarah tapped her pen against her notepad, feeling the stillness wrap around her. Alone, her thoughts grew loud, questioning the very foundation they had just built. What if she was merely playing pretend? Suddenly, Her phone lit up with a notification from a community group that had caught her eye weeks prior. Local art therapy workshop, the headline read. The weight of her self-doubt surged as she read the details. Healing through creativity. A flicker of intrigue ignited. Could art be her navigator? Could this workshop serve as a platform for the very resurrection Jenna had suggested? Her heartbeat quickened as she saved the details and scheduled a time to call the coordinator. This was a tangible step toward healing. Just then, Jenna returned, her expression lightening the moment she re-entered. I'm back. What did I miss? I think I might have found a workshop that ties into graphic design, Sarah revealed, nerves dancing alongside her excitement. That's amazing. You have to sign up. Jenna beamed, but then something in her gaze shifted, realization dawning upon her. Sarah, you know, none of this will be easy. Are you prepared for the challenges that come with it? The fears, the setbacks? You'll have to confront your past. With her friend's words hanging heavily in the air, doubt crept back in, mirroring her earlier fears. Would every step she took forward be fraught with the shadows of her losses? Was she truly ready to confront everything she had held inside? In that pivotal moment, Sarah recognized that embracing change also meant accepting discomfort. She could not run from her past, but she could redefine it. Jenna, I'm here and willing to face it, she said firmly, the fragility within her cracking at the seams. But as she voiced her intention, the unsettling truth thrummed beneath. She knew the past would reveal itself in waves, and she was unprepared for the tumultuous tides to come. Tomorrow's decisions were about much more than lists and goals. They held the power to unearth deep-seated fears. What else do I need to confront? She thought, the new spark of determination surging forward, just as tumultuous apprehension gripped her heart. As she pondered the dawning consequences of her resolve, a question loomed larger than any achievement, a silent challenge that had yet to be met. What was truly buried under the shadow of her pain? And with that, the first step felt less like a victory and more like a precipice. A knot tightened in Sarah's stomach as she faced the choices lurking before her. With one hand trembling around her pen, she turned her attention back to the notepad, the untouched landscape of promises written on blank pages. Each letter scrawled there felt like the first crack in the dam of her memories. Her mind flitted between the workshop and the echoes of Hal's laughter. The design projects they'd envisioned for the future. Would she even find joy in creativity again? Setting foot in that art therapy session meant confronting the remnants of her life. A collision of past and present she feared she might not survive. She took a deep breath, flicking her gaze from the notepad to her phone, the digital screen almost daring her to act. Jenna's earlier encouragement rang in her ears. You don't have to be certain, just willing. But willingness felt dangerously close to foolishness. Before she could second-guess herself, she tapped on the screen and dialed the workshop number. As the phone call connected, each ring felt like a chime, marking a moment of commitment. The voice on the other end greeted her cheerfully, yet it only served to amplify her mounting dread. What if they asked what she hoped to achieve? What if they wanted to know about her past? Hi, I'm calling about the art therapy workshop, she stammered, her courage waning amid uncertainty. Of course, we'd love to have you. It's a safe space for exploration, healing through creativity, the coordinator replied. That phrase pricked something in Sarah. Healing through creativity. It lodged in her mind. A silent promise that stirred both trepidation and intrigue. The prospect of pairing art, something once so personal, with her grief, felt like walking into a minefield. With every passing second, she felt the weight of her decision settling heavily. Could I come by next week? She made the request softly, bracing herself for the answer. Absolutely. We meet every Wednesday. Would you like me to reserve a spot for you? Yes, please, Sarah managed, the word escaping before she could retract it. As the coordinator confirmed her enrollment, a mixture of relief and fear tangled within her. The first step taken, yet it felt monumental, a precipice drawing her closer to the edge. As she hung up the phone, A mix of anxiety and exhilaration coursed through her veins. The workshop was a chance to rediscover herself, but also a confrontation with unspoken emotions. How could she possibly articulate the sorrow she carried? How does one turn pain into something tangible? Jenna re-entered the kitchen, her eyes glistening with curiosity. "Did you sign up?" "I did," Sarah said, her own voice surprising her with its firmness. "That's fantastic," Jenna exclaimed, bouncing slightly on the balls of her feet. But Sarah could see hesitation behind her friend's eyes, a concern for the struggle that lay ahead. "I'll be honest, what if I can't handle it? What if everything I face just pulls me under?" "Then we swim together." Jenna's determination emanated like warmth. "You're not alone in this." As Sarah looked at Jenna, gratitude washed over her, but so did an unsettling thought. How much longer would she lean on her friend to fight the battles she felt ill-prepared for? Wasn't this her journey? An abrupt wave of determination unfurled within her. "You're right," she said with newfound vigor. "Even if it's uncomfortable, even if I stumble, I need to start this. I owe it to myself." As they discussed what Sarah might want to explore in the workshop, textures, colors, shapes, she found herself contemplating a palette of emotions. It became clear that every brushstroke would reflect not just her past, but also her future. The workshop promised a fresh canvas, but that canvas was also riddled with the chaos of her experiences. Would she have the strength to face what lay within? With that thought swirling in her mind, she realized that tomorrow would arrive with its own set of challenges, dragging the weight of the past alongside her into the unknown. Yet, amidst the disarray, she felt a quiet stirring, a soft whisper of resilience urging her to carry on. Then, as Jenna shared ideas about artistic possibilities, Sarah felt the creeping sensation of an impending rupture within the fabric of her resolve. She had no idea what her first session would unearth. The deeper she plunged into that creative world, the more her sorrow would bubble to the surface. The workshop could unleash hidden dimensions of her grief. What if she couldn't articulate her feelings? What if she confronted more than she could handle? As doubts wrestled with her determination, the door of personal discovery opened wider. The next chapter of her life awaited, full of shadows, yet promising a sliver of light. With a pulse of intensity thrumming against her heart, the revelation pulsated within her. Embracing creativity meant embracing the chaotic entirety of her being. And there, at the nexus of her fears and hopes, Sarah found grit shimmering amidst the uncertainty, an invitation to delve into what lay hidden within her heart. But what awaited her once she began unraveling the threads of grief woven throughout her soul? A question lingered on the edge of her consciousness, daring her to confront the deeper truths she had kept shackled away for so long. The sun ascended lazily on the morning of the workshop, a muted glow filtering through the kitchen window and casting a soft light on the familiar surroundings. Sarah leaned against the counter, cradling a mug of tea, the warm ceramic grounding her amidst the swirling emotions. Today marked more than a mere calendar event. It symbolized the first step into a realm she had long avoided, one that required her to confront memories she'd rather forget. With every sip, anticipation churned within her. What did healing through creativity even mean? Would she end up unearthing more pain than hope? The thought of reclaiming her artistry invigorated her, yet it was tethered to the haunting fears of inadequacy. Hal's absence loomed large, an invisible weight she couldn't shake off. "Just remember, it's about exploration, not perfection," Jenna had reminded her, a phrase that stuck like a mantra in Sarah's mind. Permitting herself to fail felt alien, a luxury she'd once embraced in the protective embrace of creativity. Now, it felt like a perilous plunge into the unknown. Sarah's fingers grazed the notepad she'd left, discarded on the counter, a beacon of untouched potential. The blank pages echoed her fears and hopes, each untouched space an unwritten testament to her hesitation. What if she didn't know how to express the tumult swirling within? She glanced at the clock. Time was slipping away as dread beneath a layer of excitement. She was about to engage in a battle not just with the inevitable pangs of grief, but with herself. Every confrontation teased the truths she had hidden, like the remnants of a shattered glass. Arriving at the workshop felt surreal. The structure breathed warmth and promise, vibrant colors spilling out of its doors, beckoning her to engage. Taking a breath, she stepped over the threshold, crossing into a world that could either reclaim her spirit or drown it deeper in sorrow. With each step further inside, she felt the weight of her decision intensifying. The coordinator, cheerful and welcoming, oriented the group, guiding them with a gentle authority that created a soothing ambience. Sarah found a seat, grappling with the urge to step back, to run from this precipice she'd leaped into. Use your intuition. Let the art guide you, the coordinator urged, leading them to a canvas stocked with supplies. The stark contrast of colors against the canvas ignited something flickering inside Sarah, yearning to reconnect, to allow creativity to bypass her guards. Picking up a brush, she hesitated, her hand hovering. The initial strokes felt foreign, as if she were reconnecting with an old friend, yet losing touch with the voices that once inspired her. Would these colors adequately capture the layers of her grief? As she began to paint, memories surged. Scenes of laughter and love intertwined with shadows of loss blurred her vision. The colors took on a life of their own, each swirl an unearthed emotion, vibrant yet chaotic. The pain spilled onto the canvas, alongside ephemeral hues of hope. Then came the inevitable jolt-a-wave of deep sorrow, crashed, flooding her with emotions that couldn't be confined to the colors on her palette. The brush trembled in her grip as images compellingly took form. Each pulse of the brush echoing fragments of heartache long buried. Can it hurt this much? She whispered to herself, conviction brimming. Art wasn't simply an outlet. It was the battle arena of her torment. In that moment, she confronted the crux of her dilemma facing. It meant she was willing to be vulnerable. Could she willfully reclaim ownership over the narrative of her grief? As moments unfolded, she felt a shift. The more she laid bare her feelings, the more she grappled with the new realization, the power of transforming pain into expression. Each brushstroke was no longer just a recounting of loss. It became a narrative of strength, woven through uncertainty. But as the session drew near its end, a creeping realization took hold. She was just getting started. The culmination of the moment made her acutely aware of why she had hesitated to enter such a space in the first place. The canvas resonated with echoes of battle. Her grief had weight, yet within that weight lay a harbinger of liberation. Determined to dig deeper, to confront the profound truths hidden in layers of her creativity, Sarah released a shuddering breath. She couldn't craft a resolution yet, but she could prepare for the tumultuous journey lying ahead. Would she find a means to express the unexpressible? What immense truths might await her through the strokes yet unmet? As she looked at her burgeoning pisum-melange of emotion spilling over, the final question gnawed within her. Gathering strength, how far would she go to unearth the parts of herself she had graciously tucked away? Reclaiming those fragments urged her to bear the weight of discovery. Inside the burgeoning complexities of her heart, a catalyst stirred, beckoning her toward an inner confrontation she could no longer shy away from. She would face what lay beyond the chaos, powerfully emboldened even, if the unfolding required her to confront old adversaries. What awaited her on the other side of that canvas? Each stroke might disclose not just grief, but the potential for redemption as well. The next day dawned, draping the sky in hues of lavender and gold. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Sarah prepared herself for another round at the workshop. The night had not provided the clarity she sought. Instead, it deepened the swirl of emotions that lay dormant within her. She clutched the edge of her mattress, a tangible reminder of the unease still nagging at her. Motivated by yesterday's breakthroughs, her heart echoed with a quiet resolve. But beneath that, a storm brewed, doubt intermingled with hope, clawing at her desire to reclaim her voice. She rummaged through the remnants of yesterday's session, her hands hovering over various supplies, still splattered in vibrant colors that suggested a narrative she struggled to own. What will they think? The intrusive thought slipped past her defenses, whispering fears of exposing vulnerability to strangers. Yet another wave of determination followed, urging her to quell the noise. Perhaps it was time to cultivate an understanding of what exactly lay beneath her fear. Sensitivity she often deemed an obstacle. Arriving at the workshop felt like stepping into a realm simultaneously familiar and foreign. The air buzzed with animated chatter, but as Sarah entered, an involuntary silence enveloped her thoughts. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the sensations around her, the woodsy scent of paint, the coolness of canvas, the dim warmth of sunlight pouring through the windows. The coordinator approached her with a smile, as if sensing the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. "Today, we're diving deeper," she announced with an enthusiasm that chilled Sarah's resolve. "We'll explore not just color, but the stories they hold, both the joys and the sorrows." As the others began settling into their workspaces, Sarah grasped her brush with a clarity that startled her. The directive resonated in her chest, echoing with the rhythm of her beating heart. She hadn't just been painting her grief. She had been painting her truth, the laughter, the love, the fractured pieces of her profound sorrow. With every swirl, the uncertainty began fading, as clarity took shape. What started as chaotic forms morphed into discernible images, abstract yet unsettlingly familiar. Past joy tangled with present grief, tracing the contours of her evolving identity. How could she have forgotten that creativity was her refuge, her shield? A few hours in, she became conscious of eyes watching her. In that new awareness, the shame threatened to choke her growth. Instead of shrinking under this scrutiny, she leaned in, driven to confront the fears that twisted within. "Are you seeing me?" she thought. "Are you feeling what I'm feeling?" The brush glided with newfound urgency, translating the tumultuous dialogue into colors flaring against the canvas. Pain transformed into reds and browns, and fragile hope emerged as blushing pinks and soft yellows. A voice from across the room interrupted her immersion. "Your piece is powerful. It resonates." The comment came from a fellow participant who had been quiet until now. Feeling the unexpected heat of encouragement, Sarah looked up, locking eyes with him. Could this really be a step toward validation, embracing her raw self? Or was it merely a superficial glance, another mask of comfort? "Thank you," she murmured, still in awe of her own boldness. But there it was again, lurking beneath her expression, doubt clawing its way back to the surface. She'd always battled this feeling. It was her oldest companion. The afternoon wore on, entrancing her into a hypnotic dance of colors and subconscious unearthing. Yet deeper truths lay buried within her intuitive strokes. Could she truly articulate the magnitude of her experience? Both the light and the dark. The acceptance of each shadow. As the session began to wind down, the unmistakable ache of fragility settled in. She had laid bare more than just paint. There were shards of her soul spread over the canvas, vulnerable yet undeniably honest. Rising from her seat, she caught herself hesitating, standing at the precipice of something life-altering yet terrifying. What if she allowed these emotions to spill completely unfettered? What if this was merely the beginning, the catalyst that would propel her into unfamiliar territories of her creativity and self? Taking a deep breath, she willed herself forward. Would she take the plunge into the unknown once more? The moment of truth loomed. Would she be ready to face not only the judgments of others, but the scrutiny of her own mind, willing to embrace every hidden facet of herself in the process? With paint-stained fingers, Sarah began to walk toward the group for feedback, her heart now racing with an urgency only self-discovery could bring. The next step would demand her courage and authenticity, and she feared it might lead her to an even deeper confrontation, the worth of her voice and the legacy of her pain. What awaited her as she approached the circle? The answers might unearth more than she had bargained for, challenging her to strip away the final layers of her guarded self. As Sarah stepped forward, the weight of her emotions felt like lead pressing against her chest. Each footfall mirrored her internal struggler, man wrestling not just with the consequences of her choices, but the stark reality that the canvas before her was more than mere paint. It was a window into her very soul. The circle of workshop participants turned their attention to her, and for a moment, her stomach clenched with uncertainty. She inhaled deeply, the paint-filled air, sharp and invigorating. What if they see everything? What if they don't see me at all? These questions ricocheted in her mind, wrestling against the burgeoning desire to share her truth. "Can I share what I've created?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt, a thread of bravery woven through her lingering doubt. "Absolutely," the coordinator encouraged, nodding earnestly. "We're all here to reveal, connect, and grow with one another." With shaking hands, Sarah gestured to her canvas, the vibrant colors, a riot of emotion. This speaks of loss and healing," she began, a nervous tremor threading through her words. "I tried to capture the beautiful chaos in trying to reconcile the joy of what I've lost with the hope of what remains." The room fell silent, and she expected to hear the whispers of judgment or dismissive remarks. Instead, she witnessed a variety of expressions: curiosity, compassion, empathy. It wasn't the reaction she had prepared for. It was an acceptance she had scarcely dared to dream of. A memory surged within her, a moment from her past where she had been equally vulnerable, standing before a group of peers during a high school drama class. She had performed a monologue that spoke to the heart of loneliness. That day had felt devastating at first, much like this one, yet the resilience that followed had illuminated facets of herself she didn't know existed. "Your vulnerability is inspiring," a participant shared softly, her voice breaking the silence. "I feel that, too." Sarah's heart swelled at the connection. "Do you really?" she countered, astonished. The idea that her experience resonated with someone else began to melt away her defensive layers. Not everyone was a critic, after all. Some could share in the struggle. What took root in her chest was a budding understanding that her experience wasn't hers alone to carry. Perhaps that was the last shackle binding her, the belief that her pain defined her more than her strength. Each subsequent piece of feedback reverberated within the walls of her heart, dismantling the concept that her worth was tied solely to success or failure. "Your honesty is a gift, Sarah." The words settled around her like a warm embrace. As the discussion shifted into a supportive dialogue, Sarah noticed her confidence burgeoned with each affirmation. She found herself no longer shrinking or apologizing for her feelings. Instead, she was reclaiming them, reinforcing a narrative that was deserving of expression. Yet, there lingered an unsettling sensation within her. The appreciation was a balm, but was her work truly finished? Digging deeper revealed unfamiliar facets of herself she had yet to articulate. Would the security of this moment hold when confronted with the next wave of vulnerability? What of her voice in the larger world beyond this workshop space, the one fraught with louder judgments and higher stakes? As they wrapped up the feedback session, the coordinator encouraged everyone to reflect on what they had shared. Sarah's mind raced surrounding emotions, like a whirlpool sweeping her thoughts. Plans formed rapidly, but doubt snaked its way through, whispering accusations and second-guessing her deliberations. What exactly would embracing her voice involve? Taking a step back, she noticed the growing warmth of realization. This workshop was merely the beginning. Unearthing layers of herself would continue beyond these walls. Each brushstroke was a step into her truth, revealing the kind of artist, a person she might become when she was finally willing to acknowledge the entirety of her experiences. And then it struck her, a project, a deeper journey to solidify her emerging voice. What if she turned this exploration into a series that encapsulated everything she was uncovering? The thought exhilarated and terrified her simultaneously. Could she truly commit to a process that demanded full authenticity? As she struggled with the contours of this new possibility, the workshop ended. But her own work beckoned her onward, a call she couldn't ignore. The path stretched before her, and in its winding turns lay not just discovery but a chance for a lasting legacy. With that thought, Sarah left the space, her mind buzzing with fresh ideas, resolved to confront the impending challenge. The questions at the forefront begged to be answered. How far would she allow herself to go? What truths remained unspoken, waiting to be woven into her unfolding narrative? And as she took her paint-stained fingers and reached for her notebook, the next chapter awaited revelation. What transformations would arise as she dared to voice the immeasurable weight of her journey? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Sarah's living room as she settled in with her notebook. The remnants of the workshop clung to her like an awakening breeze, invigorating yet tinged with uncertainty. Inspiration surged within her. She envisioned a series of pieces encapsulating her journey. Yet the sheer enormity of this ambition paralyzed her. She flipped the notebook open, its blank pages staring back, taunting. Each one held the potential for truth, but also the weight of vulnerability. Sarah bit her lip, contemplating how much of her heart she'd be willing to expose. The idea of commitment now felt like a double-edged sword. Revealing her innermost thoughts could potentially liberate her, or leave her devastated. Questions circled in her mind, a cacophony demanding answers. Did she truly have the right to share stories cloaked in pain? And what if others found offense or dismissiveness in her work? The mere thought tightened her chest, echoing a deeper fear she had carried for years, that exposing her truth would somehow strip her of her dignity or autonomy. Determined to silence the inner critic, she took a steadying breath and wrote a heading at the top of a page: Themes of Loss and Hope. This simple act sparked a flicker of resolve. Her experiences, fraught with joy and sorrow, had shaped her. They deserved a space to breathe, to exist. Each word written felt like peeling away the layers of protection she had wrapped around herself. Yet, there lurked a troubling voice in the back of her mind, echoing phrases from years past. Stay small. Don't attract attention. What would it mean to defy that voice? Sarah understood that doing so required trade-offs. Vulnerability might draw connection, but it could also attract scrutiny. Visualizing her project took shape in her mind, the series feeling less like a burden and more like an exploration. She conjured images of canvases filled with swirling colors that reflected her turmoil and joy. Each piece could be a layer, stacked, revealing a mosaic of her life. It was liberating yet terrifying, a stark contrast to the hesitance that had often defined her creative drive. As she scribbled outlines of her concepts, something unforeseen emerged: a realization that she was not alone in her journey. The workshop had highlighted a crucial truth: community can be an anchor, holding individuals together in shared experiences. What if she turned this project into a dialogue, inviting others to encounter their own vulnerabilities alongside her? The thought sparked excitement. But, could she orchestrate such a reciprocal openness? What if her exploration of self-respect stumbled into the territory of others' stories? Sarah contemplated how to craft the project as an invitation rather than a declaration, an open call for collective healing. She envisioned a series of workshops that would allow others to experience their trials while cultivating their artistic voices, just as she had begun to reclaim her own. With renewed focus, she drafted a proposal, her handwriting growing bolder as her resolve solidified. She pondered the logistics: where to host the workshops, the materials needed, and how she would market the series. Each new idea poured forth, like colors on a canvas battling to find harmony. As she gathered ideas, the weight of her fears began to lift, replaced by the exhilarating pulse of possibility. And yet, the knowing question remained: would she be ready for the confrontation that clarity demanded? Unbelievably, that confrontation approached, tearing through her thoughts like a storm. The night air felt charged as she recalled the participants' eyes during her presentation. Their acceptance had ignited something she didn't know she was ready to embrace. Yet, returning to that space of openness felt fraught with expectation and fear. Scribbling furiously, she asked herself, What if her project not only reflected self-exploration, but also set the stage for others' transformations? As she drifted into deep thought, the familiar pulse of doubt returned. Was she truly capable of guiding others through their darkness when she was still grappling with her own? In that moment, she recognized this endeavor would push her to confront a deeper truth, a reckoning cloaked in the fears that had long held her back. The decision loomed large before her, to leap forward into both her journey and that of others, or to retreat back into the shadows. And with that realization anchoring in her mind, she stared at her first draft, her heart ready to beat loudly against the fear that paralyzed her. What awaited her on the other side of this threshold would test every fiber of her being. Could her voice emerge resilient, ready to embrace the complexities she long evaded? With her heart racing, Sarah knew that tomorrow would demand a choice. Would she dare to collect the fragments of her experiences and forge them into a shared artistic vision? The morning sun illuminated Sarah's kitchen, casting a warm glow that seemed to chase away the remnants of the night's anxious musings. Today was pivotal. Having crafted a proposal for a series of art workshops centered around loss and healing, Sarah felt her heart flutter in anticipation. It was a bold intention to reclaim not just her voice, but also to open the dialogue around shared grief. Though the path ahead was familiar, yet fraught with trepidation, determination surged within her. She had wrestled with self-doubt for too long, letting the shadows of her past dictate her sense of agency. The moment had come to confront those lingering fears and transform them into collective strength. As she prepared her materials for the meeting with the community center, memories of her workshop experience echoed in her mind. The group's supportive energy had been transformative. They were not just individuals grappling with their art, but fellow travelers on a shared journey. Perhaps by creating space for others to unearth their truths, she could solidify her own path forward. Arriving at the community center, Sarah was met with a wave of familiar faces, the warmth of their smiles brimming with encouragement. Today's presentation was not just about her story. It was an invitation for them to join her in a process of introspection and creativity. This made the stakes feel higher, yet ignited a passion within her that propelled her to action. As she began sharing her vision, how art could be a vehicle for navigating grief and fostering connection, she noticed nodding heads in response to her words. Since the workshop, she had dedicated herself to crafting her project, not just for herself, but for those who had walked similar paths. The potential for shared experiences seemed vast, with each person a unique thread in a healing tapestry. Imagine each workshop as a safe haven, she continued passionately. An opportunity to explore not just our pain, but also to celebrate joy, connection, and resilience. The room buzzed with excitement, the energy vibrating with shared understanding. When she finished her presentation, the responses flooded in. Enthusiastic expressions filled the space, curious individuals eager to support her endeavor. Questions arose about schedules, materials, and logistics, everything resonating with palpable excitement. The validation was not simply external. It mirrored a growing confidence within herself. She was beginning to step into her new identity as a facilitator of healing and transformation. As the meeting concluded, the community center director approached her. "This is a powerful initiative, Sarah. Your willingness to share your journey creates a bridge for others to do the same," he affirmed, shaking her hand firmly. In that moment, recognition blossomed within her. Was no longer just a project. It was a commitment to inspire authentic connections. The weight of her decision was now shared by many, the responsibility peeking from behind a veil of possibility. Walking back home, a sense of liberation surged through Sarah. Each encounter reinforced her strength, pushing the weight of fear further from her shoulders. She could already see how this initiative could transform the lives of others, providing a platform to explore their own narratives. Yet amid the exhilaration, uncertainty lingered. Would there still be resistance waiting in the wings, preparing to snare her when vulnerabilities arose? Tomorrow's workshop was just as daunting as it was necessary. But today marked a shift, a redefinition of her journey. She had chosen collaboration over isolation, engagement over retreat. Each decision through this process fortified her spirit's hand. As the shadows of fear receded, the light poured in. That night, reflecting on her accomplishments, Sarah penned new affirmations in her notebook. I am worthy of sharing my truth. I am capable of facilitating growth in others. Together, we can transform pain into empowerment. With each written thought, the tapestry of her identity unfurled, newly vibrant with potential. The realizations crystallized. She had taken ownership of her narrative and invited others to do the same. When she finally drifted off to sleep, Sarah's heart thrummed with satisfaction. The journey ahead was uncertain, but in her core, she now exuded a confidence that had eluded her for too long. She was ready. As she prepared to embark on this venture of artistic healing, she couldn't help but embrace the exhilarating uncertainty. Tomorrow held promise, adventure, and another opportunity to redefine her narrative together with those who were ready to reclaim theirs. In this forging of connections, she stood on the brink of not just personal transformation, but collective achievement, a testament to the power of sharing, healing, and ultimately thriving in the face of adversity. So, she dared to dream bigger, and the act of stepping into that space began to solidify a truth she had long sought. From pain emerges resilience, and from connection blooms the strength to push forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and engage in transformative storytelling. Don't wait even one more second to share. You need to subscribe now.